Hey everybody, Eric Dorward here with the Spartan Rocketry Club, and we are going to be beginning a new kit, building a Big Bertha. Now, this is a particularly interesting one. So, the Big Bertha model from Estes has been around for practically forever, and at some point during the 2000s, they reskinned it and made it look all like sci-fi and stuff with a black coat. So, this is actually a somewhat limited edition that they either thought better of at some point or just discontinued for whatever reason. You can still buy Big Berthas. They just don't stop selling those. But now they're black and yellow, which is the traditional one. But this one's super sci-fi and all. So fascinating. Now, because this is vintage stock, um, there are a few little quirks about it that the modern Big Bertha doesn't run into. And the first and most noticeable is the fins are die cut rather than laser cut. So usually when we get fins, they have kind of a burnt edge around wherever they've been cut, and we just have to basically cut through a couple little burrs that are holding the thing together. That is not the case if the fins have been die cut, which is the case here. So there is no burning mark. It's just wherever the stamp went down. And if you flip it to the other side, it looks just like a piece of balsa. Yeah, uncut. There are a couple little notches here and there that I can see, but by and large, the die cut doesn't go the whole way through, which is how it stays intact. So you need to cut this out. And while the modern versions, of course, do use laser cutting and are easier to deal with, hopefully at some point you try your hand at cutting your own fins. If you do that, chances are you do not have a laser cutter at your disposal, nor do you have a die cut either. However, or die cut machine, but you will basically make a pattern and then trace it and then cut it that way. That's more akin to cutting out a die cut fin than a laser cut fin. So let's just have a look here. This is a process that you want to take slowly and easily, and it's best to do it in very bright light so you can see where the die cut is. Now, I've already sanded this. It's still grainy, of course, but in sanding it, I've made it a bit harder to see where the lines are. So that's kind of the price we pay with sanding before we cut it out. So I'm just going to stick my knife in and just trace over all the lines I see. I'm not trying to cut the whole way through, although some of them are cut fairly deeply already. But like this right here, this is not the whole way through. But I am just tracing it mostly for my own benefit. And notice too that as I'm tracing, I'm not really pushing hard. I go over this one again. I'm just following the lines so I can see where they are, and I'm basically just making them more prominent for myself. And yeah, these are not cut deeply at all. So I'm going to have to go over them repeatedly in order to cut them out. My goal here is to go slowly and carefully, because if I rush through this, I could end up breaking the fin. I could end up not cutting very accurately and cutting into the fin so the shape wouldn't be right. These are all things to be avoided. Also note I'm going to spin it here because I'm going to make this cut now, or make tracing anyway, and I want to be cutting away from the other fin. So let's just be gentle here, because this one looks like the grain is lined up with the fin, or not quite with the fin right here. So this part really wants me to cut into the fin, and I very much do not want to do that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to spin around, but I'm not going to cut the whole way. I'm just going to cut around this fragile spot. Anyway, so there we go. Now, flipping it over, you can see in general terms where I've cut so far, and some of this is already kind of flaking off, which is nice. But I still can't just like flip over and trace through the cuts like I would do with a laser cut fin. So at this point, now that the tracings are basically done and the wood is starting to come apart with the deeper cuts, I can work on getting this out. So again, just slowly, multiple cuts through, pushing a little bit deeper into the wood each time. I am getting through here. kind of wiggling the wood like this does show me where I need to be focusing my attention. And usually the diagonal cuts are the ones that are going to be the ones that require the most attention, because the ones that are with the grain, they tend to just snap off without too much effort, provided, of course, like this is ever so slightly not with the grain, and that makes it problematic. Now here I have almost all of this out. Looks like just a little bit stuck in the corner here. I'm going to carefully cut in this way, and this way. And I'm going to spin it around, cut the other direction, and off comes the first bit of scrap. It's good. Let's see, what else can we take off here? Well, this diagonal looks like it's about ready to go as well, but again, I'm going to be slow. Yep, there's a bit. I'll feel it when the last little bit cracks off. Now, again, be very careful when you're doing this, because like here, the corner of this fin is not cut free yet. And if I tried to force it, I could end up snapping off that corner, and that would be problematic. Okay, I can actually, I'm going to flip it over here because I can see where it's not quite cut through. And I'm just going to encourage it out there. And there we go. That's free. The other one should be easier anyway to get off now at this point, because I don't have to worry about cutting into the other fin, so I can go both directions. And by and large, this looks pretty good, except right there. I'm just going to push through. All right. So as you can see, they're now clear. These are not particularly smooth, and that is also one of the negative possibilities of die cut or cutting it yourself, is that you won't get as smooth an edge, which makes the next little bit all the more important. So we're going to line the fins up, and we usually do this just to get the burrs off, but in this case we need to do more than just get burrs off. We need to make sure that they are all essentially the same size, and that we don't have any kind of nastiness sticking off the side. I mean, these are kind of ragged, so just back and forth. Oops. Yeah, I have a bunch of rockets on my crafting table here, and I probably should have taken them down before I started doing a repetitive behavior that would potentially knock stuff over. So in any event, I'm just going to sand off one side. There are, well, 5 sides, so I'm going to do this for all of them. Even this little one definitely needs some attention, because I can just see it right now. It looks particularly ragged. Normally this wouldn't take very long, and it's just a matter of getting rid of the burr. But here, we actually want to smooth these out in the process as well. So this is going to take a bit more time. Now, this is, if I'm looking at it right, this is going to be the root edge here. So this one I'm most interested in getting smooth. This side, well, the other sides in general, I'm probably going, I am not just probably, I'm going to shape them. I'm going to put just round the edges. So I will smooth them out like this initially, but I'm not going to worry as much about getting them smooth as I am with the root edge, because I'm not going to round the root edge later, so I'm not going to be working with it. A little bit more here. And that looks like I'm happy with those. Those should be fine. All right, so I'm going to come back to them. You don't need to watch me sand over and over and over again. Not particularly interesting. There we go. All right, next step. Well, I am not entirely following the instructions here in order, but you probably should. The main first step here is that we are going to put the motor assembly together. So here's the big body tube. Oh, by the way, I already drew the lines on for the fins as well. There's no sense in watching that. That would be with this and a door jamb, so that's done. We don't need that for a while. Oh, since I have my knife out, before I start doing anything else, I'm going to cut out the little eyelet hole. Remember, all you need to do is stick the blade in and cut toward the center of the nose cone. Don't cut out away into the ring, because you could potentially damage the ring. That was easy enough. It was pretty well punctuated, or punctuated, perforated, I don't know, cut already. So off goes that scrap. So that's done. All right, now time to make the engine mount. So in this one, we have an engine hook. And since this is going into a larger body, we need to have these adapters. And I'm just going to punch them out with my hands rather than cut them because it's good enough. These are actually well cut anyway. So there we go. This is all scrap. Don't need that. Away it goes. Now we do need a ruler for the next step. So here's my ruler, and we need a pencil. And according to the instructions, we need to get some measurements on this. We need to actually make several, and they are, interestingly enough, for this kit, I think Estes was desperately trying to either expand their presence overseas or encourage the rest of us to stop using the imperial system because of how annoying it is. Well, incidentally, the international rocket community absolutely does not use inches. They use millimeters and stuff, which is why motors are in millimeters rather than inches. The standard ones are 18 millimeters in diameter. No. Yeah, there we go. This diameter. All right. Anyway, so we need to make marks at 1/4 of an inch. That's approximately here. And 1 inch, which is here. And 2.5 inches, which is here. And at 8.5 inches, which is almost the whole length. It's just a little bit left here at the end. So there it is. All right. So that's my marking. It's done. Next, we need to get the hook into this tube. It's going to go at this mark right here, the 2.5 inch mark. By the way, you'll notice we do not have an engine block. That's because the end of this hook is going to act as the engine block because we're going to punch it through. The engine won't be able to go past this metal, and that will hold it in place as well. So in any event, we need to cut in at our 2.5 inch mark. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to slightly pull the blade, and then I'm going to stick it through. And that's probably big enough. I'll test fit it. If it's not, it's perfect. That's great. So that's what the engine hook's going to look like. The instructions say to put some tape in it. I mean, I guess we could do that, but it's not terribly important. But, it says to, so why not? Here we have a bit of masking tape. And if anything, this should make the construction part a little bit easier. So, in any event, we are supposed to be putting the tape at the 1 inch mark. Okay. I can do that. And I want it to wrap around and line up nicely. So there we go. Okay. So there's the tape done. That's fantastic. The remaining steps here are, for this, we need to put on rings. And this is going to be a particularly long motor mount. This one, the one without the notch in it, is going to go at this end, at that mark we put near the end. Likewise, this one is going to go on here, and it's going to go 1/4 of an inch from the end. So, glue time. Notice that I like to push these past the indicator rather than having them, try to put them on after you put the glue on. I just find that to be harder to deal with. So, in any event, we'll start out here, I guess. I'm trying to make a nice even bit of glue. I'm not going to bother spreading this out with the dowel because if I wanted to, I could use my finger, but I don't think it's actually all that important. Now this, in noticing, this is awfully loose. So I'm going to have to be careful with this. So I've moved it into the glue. The truth is that this end can be kind of anywhere, but we'd like it as far near the edge as possible with that 1/4 of an inch extra. All right, so that looks pretty good. I'm going to smooth the glue out in a little bit, but I'd like my hands to be clean while I apply this next one, so I'm not going to do that right now. The same deal though, 1/4 of an inch from the end. And I'm not putting glue onto the hook if I can help it. I mean, I got a little bit, but. And sliding it down to my glue. I want the hook hole there to be as centered as possible. That looks, it's not quite down far enough. All right, that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to smooth the glue into, up against the ring with my finger. Same deal with this side. Remember, I hadn't done that yet. There's actually not a whole lot of glue here for me to smooth out, so that's fine. Now, the last thing I want to do before, I'm going to put fillets on this, but I want to make sure that both of the rings are approximately perpendicular, so make right angles. So you can do that by just kind of looking directly down on it, spinning it around. It shouldn't like weave back and forth if it's at a right angle. There we go, that one's fine. And same deal with this one, looking down. This one looks, it's passable, it's fine. By the way, chances are that you will have some glue stuck to or under or whatever the engine hook. It would be preferable not to have that to be the case, but it's wood glue. It doesn't bond well between paper and metal. So if you happen to get some under there or on it or whatever, it might set up a little bit, but you're going to be able to break it free with your hands. Should not be a problem. All right, last but not least for this section, let's put our fillets on. So on each side of both of the rings, the centering rings, we are going to put some glue. And I'm going to put all the glue on first, I think. And then I will smooth it and make the fillet. Remember, the goal here is to make the structure as strong as possible, since the engine is going to be pushing against this when it launches. It would be nice to have it be pretty strong. And same deal on this side. Lovely. All right. Now for the fillet part, I'm just sticking my finger in there and pushing down and then spinning to get a nice smooth fillet. Same deal here. It's much easier to spin the tube than it is to move your finger, in my experience, or at least you get better results, put it that way. For this one with the hole, I'm going to try not to push glue into the hole, although I suspect that is going to happen one way or the other. Yes, you can see I got some glue on top of the hook. I can try dabbing that off with like a tissue or something after the fact, but really it's not that important, because as I said, if there is glue on it, you will be able to break it off should it start to get set. So I suppose I might as well, I got tissue paper here, or not tissue paper, I've got paper towels here, so I suppose I might as well just try to dab that off. Yeah, good enough. Not perfect, because there's still some glue on there. I can get that out with my fingernail, but that'll do. All right, this needs to dry, and it needs to dry very thoroughly before we try to put it in the body tube. So off camera, what's going to happen? Some drying. The next step here, aside from fin preparation, which we need to do, is to put the engine mount in, and that's not going to happen until that is absolutely dry. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to shape the fins. I'm going to continue sanding them down and then shape them. I'm not going to airfoil them. I think it'll be fine to just round them on both edges, and that will be good enough. So that will be where we pick it up next time. Thanks for watching.